the world. I could feel all this death.
Everything they've built will fall! And from the ashes of their world, we'll build a better one!
Heavy flooding has created a mess for the southwestern German town of Braunsbach, in flooding that has killed at least 3 people in Germany. Resident Steffi Güldenbott says the rain-triggered flooding was so bad it turned roads into rivers.
Someone came over and said the market square was underwater. We quickly went down, but then we couldn't reach the houses anymore. The water flooded the streets 2 or 3 meters high. Cars floated by, some of them with people inside.
Among the casualties was a young girl who was killed while seeking shelter under a railway bridge when she was struck by an inner-city train. A 60-year-old man also died when he drowned in an underground car park that flooded. Storms have rattled the region recently, with lightning strikes on Saturday injuring 9 in France and southwest Germany.
May 30th, 2016. This is a side I haven't seen here.
Jim Gardner capturing this unbelievable video as a tornado rips across his farm.
Wow, you can see the 2 other tails.
The twister making these giant wind turbines look like pinwheels. Then it takes a turn.
Watching it go right straight towards my house. Dear God, I hope it doesn't hit it. Oh my God!
It didn't get his house. It's still standing right through those trees there. But unfortunately, not everything is still standing on Jim Gardner's farm. Take a look at the machine shed.
I watched it go up in about 5 seconds.
The shed is now gone.
It looked like it just took it like matchsticks.
As it turns out, the equipment in the shed isn't even Jim's.
That was my life.
It was 88-year-old Rod Williams.
That is in 1944 I bought it new, just after World War II.
Williams had just sold the farm to Jim Gardner and hadn't even finished cleaning out the shed.
That's my parade tractor.
A neighbor took cover with his son in the basement.
I was really scared for my life and just glad to make it out alive.
A terrifying afternoon and a rural community happy to escape it unharmed.
I was just really thankful that it wasn't any bigger, really.
Russell Haythorne live now. Take another look at the damage. Not a single wall of this shed still standing. These are the enormous 14-foot doors ripped off the shed. Once the tornado came through here, it actually went across the county road and took out a number of the power lines. I'm looking at the utility crews right now working to restore power to much of this area. We're live near the Colorado-Nebraska border. Russell
Flooding
Haythorn,
concerns in
Denver
Texas will
7.
stretch into the weekend after days of rain. Downpours overnight stranded drivers and sparked water rescues in the west of the state. The deadly flooding forced more than 1,000 people to evacuate. Homes in southern Texas are submerged and cars were washed away. Flash flood warnings and watches this morning cover much of the state. Manuel Borges is in Richmond, outside Houston, where the Brazos River is still rising. Manuel, good morning.
That's right, Charlie. Good morning. The water here has topped 54 feet. That's higher than officials initially estimated the river would rise, and it is distressing news in neighborhoods like this one. As you can see, this area is simply overflowing with water, and with more rain in the forecast, there's nowhere else for it to go.
Roadways became raging rivers in Texas Tuesday. Floodwaters were strong enough to wash away this car, with the driver getting out moments before it was swept away.
There it goes.
Up to 6 inches of rain in parts of the state triggered flash flooding and prompted more than a dozen rescues in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
That looks like the road is gone, honey.
Very scary watching the water just rise so fast. I mean, it came up so fast. I couldn't believe it.
The fast-rising waters left cars submerged and even stranded this fire truck as the relentless storms continue to pummel the Lone Star State. In the southeast, the Brazos River has reached record highs. It's poured into homes and set off a new wave of evacuations. The rising river forced a family in Simonton to leave these horses behind when they were told to evacuate.
We stayed as long as we could until they forced us to get out. It was up to my chin and my dad's chin, and it's just been a mess, man.
On Tuesday, they hired a private helicopter to drop food for the stranded animals. For others, the only way around is by boat. We found Pedro Chavez, whose home is filling with water.
Are you afraid that it's going to flood completely?
A little bit, yeah.
What would that mean for your family?
I mean, kind of start over.
Start over.
Yeah.
The river is expected to remain above flood stage for the next several days. It's a dry morning here so far, but there is a chance of rain in the forecast every day through Saturday.
It's simply unbearably hot. You can't really see it, but you sure can feel it. And it feels like you're sitting in an oven with hot wind blowing at you from day to night. It's very hard to work like this. It's sweaty. Sometimes we get dizzy. Every summer I get seriously ill, Muhammad Zakir says. But he has no choice. His family depends on him, so he cycles, earning less than $5 a day.
I've only been walking for about 10 minutes right now, and I'm already soaking. It's hard to imagine how daily wage laborers who have to work in the sun all day and don't have access to modern amenities like air conditioning, fans, and many times even water, how they deal with it.
Most Indians live in villages where some 300 million don't have access to electricity. Many don't have running water either, which means long walks in scorching heat. In rapidly expanding cities like Delhi, pollution and the sheer number of people only making things worse. And the worst affected are the daily wage laborers toiling away in the sun, with no labor laws barring them from doing so in such punishing temperatures. What can we do? We have to work to fill our stomachs. This is our karma, I guess, he says. India recently recorded its highest ever temperature, mercury in one town shooting up to 51 degrees Celsius or 124 degrees Fahrenheit. Even when the sun sets, for the hundreds of thousands of homeless like Zakir, there's no respite. The only hope now, the much anticipated monsoon rains, due in June, and thankfully this year it's expected to be above average. Sunima Udas, CNN, New Delhi.
It's just past 6 a.m. in Freetown, the country's capital. People are scrambling to get water from a pipe that's used for construction. They're not supposed to, but they're desperate.
We are suffering for water. Every day we are fighting for the water.
Children are often responsible for finding water for their families. 13-year-old Kadiatu Bundu is one of them. She works at night because there are fewer people around. It's not an easy task.
I have to fight with young boys because they want our water.
Aid worker Anne-Marie Kalkner, who helps girls with their education, says it's dangerous work.
As girls, we know that they are always liable to, violence like sexual harassment.
But not all girls can escape, and aid groups are concerned about an increase in teenage pregnancies. As for the water shortage, the government partly blames a growing population. There are just over 1 million people now in Freetown. That means the main dam built in the 1960s isn't big enough. There are smaller dams, but they can't meet demand.
This is the Congo Dam, and it normally serves about 200,000 people in Freetown. But for the first time this year, it started to dry up. Now, normally, the water should be going just as high as at Bridgepoint.
And although it's normal for some water shortages during the country's dry season, deforestation around the dams is raising concern.
The trees that would otherwise cover the dam and other water supply sources, once they've been cut off, the trees have been cut down, and then there's increased sunlight, obviously evaporation would happen.
The government says it's doing what it can to alleviate the shortage. It's been supplying vulnerable communities with water tanks. Amnesty International says water is a basic human right, and a lack of it leads to other problems.
Even the right to health, that is where people don't have access to safe, clean, accessible, and affordable drinking water.
Teenagers like Kadiatu and Anna have more immediate concerns. They need to supply their families, despite the constant worry of who they may encounter at night. Nina DeVries, Al Jazeera, Freetown, Sierra Leone.
A gold rush in Peru's southeastern Amazon has laid waste to the rainforest and wreaked havoc on human health. The country's Environment Ministry says 41% of the population have dangerous levels of the neurotoxin in their bodies. It's not just the miners who handle mercury used to separate gold from ore, but also the people who eat the fish from contaminated rivers. The emergency measures will stand for 60 days.
En primer lugar, para controlar la minería ilegal.
First, to control illegal mining. Secondly, to eliminate it. Thirdly, to rehabilitate and look after people. That's it. With the action of the Supreme Decree 034/2016 PCM, what we will do is to build a strategy from this government to the people of Madre de Dios.
Madre de Dios, one of the most biodiverse places on the planet, is the epicenter for rampant alluvial gold mining. The Environment Ministry says the miners dump around 40 tons of mercury in rivers every year and have destroyed more than 100,000 hectares of rainforest. Even small amounts of mercury can cause irreversible damage to multiple organs, including the brain. Children and pregnant women are the most vulnerable. The government plans to take uncontaminated fish to Madre de Dios and will also set up mobile health clinics and implement education campaigns. It's a crisis which experts saw coming.
Most of the people in Madre de Dios, more than 95%, consume fish daily. It's their primary protein source. So this represents a very serious public health crisis.
Authorities in Madre de Dios have rejected the emergency measures as an exaggeration. The outgoing government had launched military crackdowns on illegal mining, but to little effect. Meanwhile, the front-running presidential candidate, Keiko Fujimori, has pledged to reverse environmental regulations which obstruct the miners. Dan Collins, CCTV, Peru.
Now, Turkish police have clashed with activists holding a rally to mark the 3rd anniversary of the 2013 Gezi protests in Istanbul. Clashes erupted as thousands of people hit Istanbul's famous shopping street with the aim of marching to Gezi Park. However, they were stopped by police before being able to reach there. A similar demonstration was held in the capital, Ankara. The 2013 protest initially began after a small group of environmentalists demonstrated against the cutting of trees in the only green area of Istanbul's Taksim Square. But the excessive use of force by police sparked a broader anti-government movement known as the Gezi Park protests. Unrest quickly turned into nationwide demonstrations, and 8 people lost their lives in the ensuing crackdown on protesters. Yemeni media said that Ansarullah fighters and allied army units launched a ballistic missile into Najran district in Saudi Arabia. There are no reports of casualties yet. Saudis have continued their air attacks against Yemen despite the ongoing talks in Kuwait between representatives of a Saudi-backed former regime and a delegation made up of Ansarullah and its allies. The Saudi invasion of Yemen has killed more than 9,400 people and plunged the nation into a humanitarian crisis. Now, political commentator Hussein al-Bukhaiti says that Saudi Arabia is pressing ahead with its war against Yemen because Riyadh thinks that it's not part of the Yemen peace talks.
The Saudi has not stopped since the beginning of this truce on the 10th of April. We have constant attack on Yemen, and just the latest missile on Saudi main army base in Najran was a retaliation of today so-called violation. The Saudi, they just keep going with this war because they think they are not part of this negotiation and talks in Kuwait. They think themselves, as the UN has mentioned and the UN convoy has said, that the Saudi are mediating a peace talk. This is not a civil war. This is a war that's raged on Yemen, a war that the United States is part of it. The entire Security Council is part of it. So I think that the UN is under the control of those countries who are part of this aggression, and because of the Saudi money, because of the Saudi oil that's supporting the economy of this country, so that's why the Saudi are keeping this war, because the United States has not given yet the red light for the Saudi to stop, have not told them stop your war. They just continue this, and they haven't done the minimum. When people have in talk, you must do the minimum at least to keep the ceasefire. They haven't done it so far.
North Korea once again failed in its attempt to fire off a Musudan ballistic missile today, the latest of 4 failed launches in under 2 months. The provocative act comes amid heaviest yet international sanctions imposed on the regime. Kwon Jang-ho has the details.
At 5:20 a.m. South Korea time, North Korea launched a mid-range Musudan ballistic missile from its missile testing site in Wonsan on the eastern coast of the peninsula. Seoul's defense ministry later confirmed the launch failed, and although an investigation of the specifics is ongoing, its initial findings suggest the missile exploded on takeoff, possibly injuring personnel near the launch site. It's the latest in a series of embarrassing failures for Kim Jong-un's regime. On April 15th, the first ever launch of a Musudan missile exploded in mid-air, and 2 weeks later, 2 more missiles were launched on the same day, with both also ending in failure. The Musudan has a theoretical range of 3,000 to 4,000 kilometers, which would make it capable of reaching all of Japan and as far as the US territory of Guam. It's also thought to be capable of carrying a nuclear warhead. The South Korean Joint Chiefs of Staff said it's on alert for any signs of additional missile tests and is prepared for any future provocations. Kwon Jang-ho, NNN News.
And could this be a UFO? It looks like it's moving with the clouds.
Oh, do you see this?
That's crazy.
The internet is buzzing this morning over this bizarre video shot near a military base in Dayton, Ohio, that appears to show an object hovering and disappearing into the clouds. Here's another sighting of a similar object, also allegedly seen in the skies over Dayton, believed to be the same UFO. What do you think about this? I know you have an opinion.
Wright-Patterson Air Force Base there, long believed to be housing all sorts of military craft. There have been a number of military members that have gone on the record about what they're housing at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio.
The truth is out there.
I'm on it.